law and its variants. That's a law moving through state legislatures regarding child custody cases and what is allowed and not allowed in child custody cases. And it's coming through the domestic violence concerns, national legislation on domestic violence, and it got child custody got glommed onto that. And it's a problematic statute because it's being written by one side in the litigation, and the Kayden's law and its variants need balance for both litigants and the concerns of both litigants. Right now, it's highly unbalanced in favor of one of the litigants' concerns and preventing the other litigant from presenting their concerns to the court. So today, though, I'm going to talk about Kayden's law specifically targeting one person, Dorcy Pruter, and one intervention, the High Road Workshop. And it provides a lot of words. It provides an attack on a genre, but the genre is focused on one person because there actually is no genre. There is no such thing as reunification treatments or that sort of thing. And so when they use that word, they're just making stuff up. And it's actually targeting one person and one workshop, Dorcy Pruter and the High Road Workshop. So I'm going to discuss that today, likely going forward as well, because this whole thing is a symptom feature of a persecutory delusion. So with that, let's start in on what Kayden's law is looking at here. So this is what I would call the Dorcy High Road statute of the Kayden's law variants. And this one's from Ohm's law, which is Utah's. And it says, as part of a child custody proceeding where the court has reasonable cause, the court, they're getting vague, and it's just going to create more fighting in the family courts, the way this is worded. Where the court has reasonable cause to believe that there is domestic violence, child abuse, those two should be reversed. It should be where the court has reasonable cause to believe there is child abuse and domestic violence. Domestic violence is not related to child custody. Understand that. Domestic violence is not related to child custody. There is a little link that you can possibly make, but child custody is about the dangerousness of the parent to the child. Now, is that associated with possible domestic violence? Possibly. And so it's a consideration, but it's not the primary consideration on child custody. But you can see here in the legislation, it's unbalanced. They have domestic violence as the primary issue in child custody. No. It should be child abuse and domestic violence. And it should be intimate partner violence, not domestic violence. That's a vague word. Intimate partner violence is the actual research word. So we should be grounded in the science and not just stuff. Or an ongoing risk to the child. Now, this is interesting. What ongoing risk to the child is there beyond child abuse? So they say reasonable cause to believe there is child abuse or domestic violence or ongoing risk. If there's no child abuse, there is no ongoing risk. So that phrase right there, what's the ongoing risk? The fears of the narcissistic borderline dark personality parent. So it's their own persecutory fears and beliefs that is getting written into the legislation. So even if there's no child abuse, but one parent fears that their child is at risk, then that's in the legislation. If one parent fears that the other parent's abusive, then the court may not order a reunification treatment. There's no such thing as a reunification treatment. Okay, so that's just, the court may not order bingo-bobs. Okay, that's very interesting. What is a reunification treatment? Is it CBT therapy? Is it psychodynamic therapy? Is it internal family systems therapy? Dialectic behavior therapy? What is a reunification treatment? So that we know what's allowed and what's not. And so this is just horribly written legislation. A treatment or program, so it's just pretty much the court cannot order anything, nothing, unless there is generally accepted proof. What's generally accepted proof? We're going to be fighting about that in court. It's going to have to go to trial, and we're going to have to put on evidence whether the intervention for the pathology is generally accepted or has generally accepted proof. This is just nightmare. It's just going to create more fighting and more stuff, and it's designed to prevent solutions. Generally accepted proof of the physical and psychological safety, effectiveness, and therapeutic value of the reunification treatment. Now, I will offer that no treatment out there will match that criteria. Not dialectic behavior therapy, not family systems therapy, not CBT therapy, because none of those therapies have demonstrated or generally accepted proof that they are psychologically safe, effective, and of therapeutic value for reunifying for attachment pathology. CBT has no data that says it's effective or safe or of therapeutic value with attachment pathology. Dialectic behavior therapy, none of these therapy, internal family systems therapy, has no data relative to its safety and effectiveness with attachment therapy. It's like the people are making stuff up that is not grounded in reality. Let the doctors decide on the treatment. Stop trying to micromanage what the doctors can do. Diagnosis guides treatment. So if you got a diagnosis and then you treat with an appropriate treatment for that diagnosis. If you want to argue about the diagnosis and treatment, get a second opinion from another doctor. You don't take it to the courts and you don't take it to the legislatures. If you disagree with my diagnosis of autism, get a second opinion on the diagnosis of autism. But it's not a legislative issue about micromanaging how we treat autism. And so it's just problematic legislation. This is a very problematic statute for all treatments. All treatments, all psychotherapies, cognitive behavior, dialectic behavior therapy, all of them will have to have generally accepted proof that they are effective and safe with severe attachment pathology, and none of them do, because of no therapy in the family courts for 40 years because the forensic psychologists are awful. So this is not a problem with the treatment. This is a problem with the forensic psychologists not providing effective treatments is where this is coming from. So, and two, that the reunification treatment, there's no such thing, stop making stuff up, is not associated with causing harm to the child. Associated with causing harm. What kind of, it's too vague, way too vague. And the court may not order a reunification treatment. Again, they can't order any form of psychotherapy to treat the attachment pathology, is what that's saying. No form of psychotherapy to treat attachment pathology. The court cannot order that for attachment pathology that is predicated on cutting off a child from a parent. So if we have a child abuse diagnosis, for psychological child abuse, we cannot separate the child from the parent, from the abusive parent. That's prohibited by Kayden's law. If we have a diagnosis, I want you to understand this, if we have a diagnosis made by mental health professionals of child psychological abuse, DSM-5 V995.51, we will be prohibited by law from protecting the child, separating the child from the abusive parent. The court must leave the child with a diagnosed psychologically abusive parent because of Kayden's law, because of this particular statute, this right here. This one will require the court's participation in psychological abuse, because listen to who they exempt. Who is competent and not physically or sexually abusive. They can be psychologically abusive, they can be neglectfully abusive, and we cannot protect the child. We cannot separate the child from a psychologically abusive parent or a neglectfully abusive parent, only from physically and sexually abusive parents. The court will be required to keep the child with a diagnosed psychologically abusive parent by order of the state legislature of Utah, and with whom the child is bonded. That's a nightmare phrase. We're going to have to assess what bonded means. Is a child bonded to this parent? Does it mean healthy bonded or just pathological bonded? Is an insecure attachment bonded? Insecure avoidant? Insecure ambivalent? Are those bonded, or are those insecure attachments not bonded? What about a disorganized attachment? The worst possible attachment. Is that a bonded relationship? Are we going to have to measure the bonded relationship before we take any steps? Diagnosis guides treatment. Get it out to a mental health professional. Get a diagnosis. Get a treatment plan to fix the problem. If there's dispute about the diagnosis, get a second opinion. This is going to be a disputed diagnosis. We should always have second opinions, at least on these court-involved cases. That's the solution. Keep it in healthcare. Stop trying to legislate what the doctors do with their patients. So, reunification treatment. Do they mean cognitive behavior therapy? Do they mean internal family systems therapy? Do they mean emotionally focused therapy? Actually, by their definition of what reunification therapy is, yes, they do. They are banning all forms of psychotherapy that do not have generally accepted proof that they are safe with treating severe attachment pathology in the family courts, narcissistic borderline pathology, this specific pathology. So why would the state legislate? Now, their intent was not to prevent all therapy. Their intent was to target one person. So why would the state legislature prevent the use of specific therapies? Because there's no reunification treatment category of therapy. So what specific treatments are they preventing? By reunification treatment, they mean the high road 4-day reunification workshop that requires a 90-day protective separation from the psychologically abusive parent, along with follow-up maintenance care from a mental health professional during the 90-day recovery period. Now, this is important to understand. The 4-day workshop is just 4 days. And then Dorcy needs to hand these people over to the mental health system. She just recovers healthy attachment. It's not a treatment. It's just a brief intervention, a psychoeducational workshop that recovers the child's attachment bond. It's not a treatment. And so when people say the high road is some sort of treatment, that is a lie. That's lying. It's not a treatment. It is just watching some videos and doing some simple activities, structured skill building activities like making I statements, or like the talking stick and how to conflict resolution kind of things. And so it's simple workshop activities and watching videos like you might see on Saturday morning TV or something, or on YouTube on the internet. And that's all it is. And so people who are making things up about the high road workshop are making things up from ignorance, a lack of knowledge and information. And ignorant opinions have no value. First, before you start making up your ignorant opinions about what the high road is and does, talk with Dorcy and find out what the high road is, and talk with me. Find out, look what it is, before you start making stuff up. This is actually like the McMartin preschool sex abuse thing, if you remember that. It's kind of like this hysteria that's moving from the borderline moms and children are being abused, and there's terrible treatment providers who are abusing. No one's abusing children. The treatment providers are not abusing children. Dr. Childress is not abusing children. Dorcy Pruter is not abusing children. We're not evil people over here, because we hate children and are doing. No, that's not true. That's a lie. That's a persecutory delusion. And if you believe a shared delusion, you become part of the shared delusion. The legislature, the courts, everybody. You need to know what the pathology is here. It's narcissistic, borderline, dark personality pathology collapsing into a persecutory delusion. That's the pathology in the family courts. You need to understand what it is. Forensic psychology used all these euphemisms, and they've hidden what the actual pathology is from the courts, from the legislature. It's narcissistic, borderline, dark personality pathology in a parent who is producing a shared persecutory delusion and factitious disorder imposed on the child for secondary gain of manipulating the court's decisions on child custody. That's the pathology. So recognize that going in, and you can start dealing with some of the associated persecutory belief systems. So Kayden's law is written specifically and directly targeting one business Conscious Co-Parenting Institute, one workshop, the High Road Workshop, and one person, Dorcy Pruter, who effectively recovers children from child psychological abuse by a narcissistic borderline dark personality parent. Why would the pathology go to such trouble to eliminate one person and one workshop? Because it's effective in solving the pathology. One of the litigants does not want to solve the pathology, so they are going to their legislator, creating all these lies and false beliefs to stop a solution for the child and family. And the legislature's participating in it because they don't realize it's a persecutory delusion, and they believe the delusion as if it's true. So the correction of the legislation for balance is to simply add psychological child abuse and neglect as acceptable child abuse diagnoses warranting a protective separation. So the first question is, why were these left off? Can you see the bias? That the one litigant is worried about sex abuse and physical abuse. The other litigant is worried about neglect of not teaching the child to follow court orders and psychological abuse, creating a shared delusion factitious disorder. So we have in the legislation, we have the two abuse concerns of one litigant, but we don't have the two abuse concerns of the other litigant. Oh, how convenient. Put those two back in. Now you have balanced legislation. So correcting Utah's Ohm's law, I would suggest as part of the child custody proceeding, all the rest of that can just be eliminated. And I'll explain why in just a second. But all of that, the rest of that stuff is just unnecessary. It just creates conflict. It gets everybody litigating about what is, a reasonable cause or what is generally accepted proof. And everybody's going to be fighting about it. So just eliminate it. And so as part of the child custody proceeding, a court may not order a reunification treatment that is predicated on cutting off a child from a parent who is competent and not physically, sexually, psychologically, or neglectfully abusive. There it is. That's all you need. Because the first one, delete where the reasonable cause and all that sort of stuff, there's no need to restrict any necessary protection to only overtly identify domestic violence, intimate partner violence, or child protection concerns. If there's protections, provide their necessary protections to all parents, all children, and all litigants. Okay, so that's not necessary. Second, why is domestic violence listed ahead of child abuse as a primary concern around child custody? That should be flipped. And third, what ongoing risk is there besides child abuse? Unfounded fears, get rid of them. We shouldn't be basing our decision making on the unfounded fears of one of the parents. Okay, we should be basing our decision making on reality. So the next one, deletion 2, reunification program with generally accepted proof and everything. This carries the implication that treatment providers provide treatments that are unsafe, ineffective, or no treatment value. That's an us thing. There's all sorts of ethical obligations for competence, licensing board complaints, and duty to protect obligations. And no, the treatment providers are not intentionally going out evil people trying. No, that's not true. You don't need to protect children from the treatment providers. Okay, so the duty to protect obligations and ethical competence standards apply to all mental health professionals. So we just need competent mental health people. And so this whole statute, though, indicates we don't have competent mental health people. So the legislature is coming in because the mental health people should be solving it and are not. And so Dorcy Pruter is over here solving it because of the failure of the mental health people. If they were solving it, we wouldn't need Dorcy in the family courts. But the simple fact that they are incompetent, the forensic psychologists are absolutely incompetent. It's a failed service delivery approach to families that allows people like Dorcy Pruter to come in here and solve it in lieu of the mental health people. Get the mental health people back. Get them solving it. And, she can go on and do something else once they get over here. So treatment plans with goals, interventions, timeframes, and outcome measures will resolve this situation. It'll be effective. We'll get treatment outcome measures. We'll show it's effective. It's safe because we don't do unsafe stuff with kids. And then associated with causing harm to the child. Duty to protect obligations apply to all mental health professionals. This is unnecessary. There appears to be a false belief in the legislation that the children are being malevolently treated in some way by the treatment providers. Google a persecutory or APA persecutory type of delusion is delusions that the person or someone to whom the person is close, the child, is being malevolently treated in some way. So this is a persecutory delusion that the child is being malevolently treated in some way by the treatment providers, the psychologists, Dorcy Pruter, who's ever providing the treatment for the child or the interventions for the child, or who's trying to stop the child's pathology, who's ever trying to restore a healthy bond, attachment bond between a child and a parent, is malevolently treating the child in some way. That's your persecutory delusion. If you believe a shared delusion, you become part of the shared delusion. The state legislature is part of the shared delusion. They are part of the child abuse and spousal abuse of the targeted parent using the child as a weapon because of their not misdiagnosis of the pathology. Their state legislatures are not doctors. They've misdiagnosed the pathology. The constituent walks in, gives them this virtuous victim presentation and gets some of their allied, flying monkey DV people and, doing their own protective other role in the trauma reenactment narrative. And the legislature just got totally manipulated. Dark personalities, Machiavellian manipulation. This is it. This isn't a good example of Machiavellian manipulation. So here's the final revision. As part of a child custody proceeding, a court may not order a reunification treatment that is predicated on cutting off a child from a parent who is competent and is not physically, sexually, psychologically, or neglectfully abusive. There you go. Change that. There's your statute. It's simple. It's direct. It's not confusing. It's not going to create more arguments and more litigation and more financial cost and just hardship to everybody involved. So here's our response to child abuse. All the time, all forms of child abuse. When child abuse is the return diagnosis, we always protect the child. In all cases of child abuse, physical, sexual, neglect, psychological, duty to protect obligations and the professional standards of practice requires a child's protective separation from the abusive parent. The child's healthy and normal range development is then recovered. Once stabilized, the child's contact with the abusive parent is reestablished with enough safeguards in place to ensure that the child abuse does not resume when contact with the abusive parent is restored. That's how we respond to all forms of child abuse. And we always protect the child. And so if you look back, why aren't we protecting the child in Ohm's law from psychological and neglect abuse? Because the legislature has been manipulated. In the absence of child abuse, each parent should have as much time and involvement with the child as possible. In the absence of child abuse, to restrict either parent's time and involvement with the child would damage the child's attachment bond to that parent, thereby harming the child and harming the parent. The clinical question that needs to be answered is whether there is child abuse in one of the four categories: physical, sexual, neglect, psychological. It's simple. Now, here's the data from the High Road Workshop. So High Road Workshop in this data, these are daily ratings from the targeted parent on three features. Affection, that's the blue line. Cooperation is the gold line. And social involvement is a silver line. It's a 1 to 7 scale. 1 and 2 is awful. 6 and 7 are wonderful. So you see the child comes in there at that first A phase on ones and twos. So they are absolutely awful in terms of attachment, cooperation, social involvement. When they entered the workshop on day one, the child and parent were just at ones. They were awful. And this is a 2-day workshop. Dorcy adjusted this particular one to make it 2 days. So what you're seeing, the recovery here, is in 2 days. There was 3 years of documented child abuse. 3 different psychologists. I've read the reports. I can get you the diagnoses from 3 separate psychologists of child psychological abuse by the father in this case. This is a 15-year-old child, and this data was presented peer-reviewed to the the National Convention of the American Psychological Association in 2019. So this is peer-reviewed data presented to the APA National Convention for the High Road Workshop Recovery. It's a single case ABA design, which is one of the two designs that can prove causality. The other one is a randomized control study or a single case ABA design. Both of those prove causality. Okay, either one. Okay, so this isn't the knock on single case ABA designs is that are they replicable? It worked for this child, will it work for the next child? It definitely worked for this child. You got the data, you see it. So it definitely worked for this child. That's a fact. That's a given fact. You can look at the data. Will it work for the next child? You replicate it. So get Dorcy to do another one, get the mental health people to follow up on it, and we can get additional data on this. Piece of cake. Dorcy collects the first A and B on all her cases. So she collects the recovery. It's just the mental health people are falling down on the job and not continuing it. So ask Dorcy for her data on the B phase, and she'll give you lots of data because she does it all the time. She collects this data on every one of her workshops. So she can prove that her workshops are effective. It's just she doesn't have the scientific, because the mental health people are not participating, not cooperating. She's not a university researcher. Look at this data. She's not a university researcher. She's a businesswoman and family coach. Where are the university researchers kind of over here to look at this? If she doesn't get any help from the mental health people, it's not her fault. It's the mental health people's fault. Where's the AFCC coming over here and consulting with Dorcy and trying to get training programs for their forensic psychologists on how to work with the High Road workshop or what the workshop is or anything? Where is the outreach from professional psychology to Dorcy Pruter? They're failing, absolutely failing. And look at this data, though. Look. That 2 days in that second A phase, that child rocketed up. And then my therapy, I was a maintenance care therapist. So afterwards, I got to, and so those are ratings from the mom during my therapy period. And I'm messing with the child and he's going up. That's a stable recovery. In my therapy, that's a stable recovery. And I got to see them. I checked out the child. He was a clean child. And the parent, there's no reason for the targeted mom to be making up this data. If it wasn't going well, she'd say it wasn't going well. She's saying this is fine. It's been recovered in 2 days. 2 days. And notice that first A phase where the lines are flat. That's because I was over in the Netherlands. And so the child had to remain stable with the mother following the workshop for like 2 weeks before I got back and started meeting with the family. And they did 2 days of a workshop, recovered a healthy, normal, that stayed stable until I got back. But what Dorcy needs here is that second A phase. She needs the maintenance care therapist to receive the child. And she doesn't have any of those because the mental health people are failing completely. And so she recovers the child, but she has no one in the mental health system to pass the child to and the parent to. And she needs a protective separation because that's a treatment for child abuse. So she gets a diagnosis of mental health professional, diagnosis of child abuse, psychological child abuse. The court orders a protective separation, or the court makes a decision that the protective separation is necessary based on finding of fact. And then they order the High Road workshop. She recovers the child, but it's not a treatment. And so it's 4 days. In this case, 2 days. And then she's done. That's all she does. That's the workshop. She's done. And then she passes to the mental health professionals to start their treatments and because she's just giving you a little boost of recovering healthy before you start your treatment. But she has no mental health people. Well, that's a failure of professional psychology. So instead of the legislature trying to ban effective interventions for families, they should be looking at getting the families competent mental health services. They should be reviewing why the licensing boards are not enforcing ethical standards of practice in the family courts. Why are we having such a low level of competence, absolutely low, bottom of the level, in the family courts, where the patients are explaining the pathology to the doctors. You know how bad that is for the patient to explain the pathology to the doctor? And yet that's what's happening in the family courts. Where are the licensing boards? Where are the legislatures looking at the licensing boards' failure in the family courts? Why are the licensing boards failure? Because they're corrupted with the forensic psychologists. They're allowed to self-review and they exempt themselves from all ethical standards. The licensing boards are corrupted with the influence of forensic psychologists. Why isn't the legislature looking into that? Why can't we get competent mental health services in the family courts? Why can't Dorcy find a competent psychologist to pass their kids off to? Instead, the pathology goes and attacks her because it doesn't want any solution for these families. Staff splitting. Linehan, we know this around borderline personality. That's what we got in the family courts. Narcissistic, borderline, dark personality. We're going to see staff splitting. Staff splitting, as mentioned earlier, is the much discussed phenomena in which professionals treating borderline patients begin arguing and fighting about the patient, the treatment plan, or the behavior of the other professionals with the patient. That is exactly what's happening. Exactly. This whole situation with the high road and with Dorcy Pruter and with the Kayden's law is staff splitting. It's the professionals fighting amongst themselves about the patient and about the treatment plan or the behavior of the other professionals regarding the patient. I know that. None of the psychologists know that. None of the legislatures know that. The courts don't know that. We're engaged in staff splitting. It's a symptom feature of the pathology. The Kayden's law is a symptom. Kayden's law is a symptom. It's a symptom of a persecutory delusion reaching the legislature. It's a symptom of the staff splitting was associated with borderline personality pathology. Google ignorance, lack of knowledge or information. That's the definition of the word. I use the word ignorant a lot to refer to a lot of the people in the family courts. And I'm not using the word ignorant like in a negative way, sort of. I'm using it in a descriptive English language way. They lack knowledge or information. They are ignorant by definition of the English language. And so they are running around making these decisions and out of ignorance. And they're making really, really bad decisions because they have no clue. They have no knowledge or information about the situation they're making decisions about. The forensic psychologists, the legislatures, the courts, everybody. Oh, it's so bad. All right. So how do we solve staff splitting? Linehan. Arguments among staff members and differences in points of view traditionally associated with staff splitting are seen as failures in synthesis and interpersonal processes among the staff rather than the patient's problem. Therapist disagreements over a patient are treated as potentially equally valid poles of a dialectic. So basically, you're saying it's not the patient's problem. It's not the problem with the justice system and the legal system. It's not the problem with, the people. Okay, it's not the problem with Dorcy Pruter or Dr. Childress, polarities have arisen in the situation, and we need to reintegrate and move back to the middle and integrate those polarities. And so the first step is to realize we've got polarities in this situation, and then thus the starting point for dialogue is the recognition that the polarity has arisen together with an implicit, if not explicit, assumption that resolution will require working for synthesis. So stop demonizing Dorcy Pruter. Stop demonizing treatment providers who are trying to solve things, because this is a narcissistic, borderline, dark personality pathology. It is the most dangerous, retaliatory pathology on the planet. And it wants this child, it's using the child as a regulatory object. If you try to take its regulatory object away from a narcissistic border, they're going to attack you. They're going to attack you viciously, which is what they've done with Dorcy Pruter for over a decade, attacked her viciously. Parallel process. You don't want to know how vicious it gets? Look to those election workers in Georgia, those two women who were singled out by Giuliani, and all the attack that happened from the flying monkeys around this pathology on them. That was devastating. Dorcy has faced exactly that attack for over 10 years. Slander, lies, just viciousness, just every effort designed to destroy her and to destroy her business, because she's trying to stop the child abuse. She's trying to stop the pathological, narcissistic, borderline, dark personality parent from using the child as a regulatory object. She's trying to take that regulatory object away from that parent. And so she's getting attacked viciously. And this is part of the thing. And so this now reached the legislatures, where the legislature have been manipulated into becoming weapons of abuse of Dorcy Pruter. These are false allegations of abuse made against Dorcy Pruter, and the legislator is believing the false allegations, and that becomes abusive of Miss Pruter and her business and what she's trying to accomplish, and stops her from protecting children from child abuse. So I want to take a look at this again and recognize that the High Road Workshop meets Ohm's Law requirements. I will assert that the High Road Workshop meets Ohm's Law requirements. That the Ohm's Law requires that a court may not order a reunification treatment or program unless there is generally accepted proof that it's safe. I will offer this as it was APA, National Convention, peer-reviewed presentation, single case ABA data. That's lock on causality. That's a 2-day workshop. Look what the legislature is trying to prevent parents and the courts from getting. Look at that for a second. That 2 days, from 1s and 2s all the way up, that's what the legislature does not want parents and the courts to have available to them. It's not a treatment. It is a workshop. They watch videos. They do structured skill building activities. That's all it is. And it recovers the child's healthy attachment bond in a matter of days. And the legislature wants to prevent that. The legislature is being manipulated. Pure and simple. Pure and simple. This is a symptom feature of a persecutory delusion, and they believe the persecutory delusion. Now, important to understand, Dr. Childress, I have personally, reviewed the High Road Protocol of videos and activities. I understand exactly what it is, exactly how it achieves its success. It is not a treatment. It is a workshop, a psychoeducational workshop. It is safe. It is immensely effective. It is gentle. I know this to be a fact. I have personally observed all 4 days of a High Road Workshop from the child's arrival to their time of leaving, when they're out the door. All 4 days. I was there for all 4 days. I have personally, received a child and parent for maintenance care therapy after their recovery from a High Road Workshop. I have immensely detailed and personal direct experience with the High Road Workshop. My conclusion is, as a doctor, as a clinical psychologist in child and family therapy, my conclusion is the High Road Workshop is a gentle, psychoeducational approach, not a treatment, that restores normal range attachment bonding in a matter of days. It is also my conclusion that the denigration of the High Road Workshop and Miss Pruter is a lie, and it is a symptom feature of a persecutory delusion. Kayden's Law is a symptom feature of a persecutory delusion. As written, adjust it and it's fine. Adjust it for balance. And then you'll get balance. You'll get an authentic response to the child abuse in the family courts. Google ignorance, lack of knowledge or information. The opinions offered about Dorcy Pruter's High Road workshop are ignorant by definition of the English language. I would recommend that people speak with Dorcy Pruter and learn what she actually does. Don't be ignorant. Learn what she does. It is not a treatment. That is a lie. It is watching videos and doing simple workshop activities. Okay, there's no, all this other stuff is just lies. And learn what she does. Ignorant opinions are of no value. In fact, they're destructive. You're trying to take away something that's very, very effective, very, very gentle, because you're just ignorant about what it is. She needs competent mental health professionals to receive the children following the successful workshops. That's where we should be focused, not on preventing Dorcy from accomplishing what she does. Let's get her the mental health support after she recovers the children. She is dying out there trying to get mental health people, and nobody's getting her competent mental health people. That's part of my role. I'm trying to get her competent mental health people to treat the pathology. We're the ones, the doctors are the ones who treat the pathology, not Dorcy. She's just got a workshop that recovers children and parent training courses and research projects. She's resourceful. So to be clear, Dr. Childress is highly critical of Gardnerian PAS experts. Dr. Childress is highly critical of forensic psychologists. So I'm not a shrinking violet in this family courts. If I'm seeing a problem, I'll say there's a problem. You know that. Dorcy Pruter is a coach and a businesswoman, not a licensed mental health professional. Now, if you know anything about the turf wars, licensed psychologists aren't real happy with coaches because they're not licensed. And so there is absolutely no reason for Dr. Childress to support Dorcy Pruter. None, zero. Except that the High Road workshop gently and effectively recovers healthy attachment bonds that were destroyed by psychological child abuse from a narcissistic, borderline, dark personality parent. So I want everybody to be real clear on that understanding. I have no business associations with Dorcy. I have no connections to Dorcy. No connection there. I'm in the family courts. I'm a consultant in the family courts. It's my job to know who's here. Stay away from Linda Gottlieb. Dorcy Pruter, she's good. Family Bridge is probably good. It's my job to know who's here and what they do. Dorcy Pruter has my full support, and the High Road workshop has my full support. All of what Dorcy accomplished has my support. Her parenting course, all of her approaches are effective to their intended purpose. And they're gentle, they're effective. She's a good human. She's a child of this alienation. So you're attacking the child. Okay, we recognize that. When you are attacking Dorcy Pruter, you are attacking the child survivor of child psychological abuse. So out of the family court and all this kind of stuff and this conflict and that child, you are now suppressing that child's voice, and the reason she's able to get these recoveries so fast because she is that child. She knows, and so she's bringing knowledge that the professionals don't have. Okay, and the professionals should get it. I wish the professionals would talk to Dorcy, but they're just lazy. They're just lazy and ignorant and competent like a rock. And so the only reason I support Dorcy Pruter and the High Road workshop is because I know for a fact that what she does is safe, effective, and gentle. And so it has my full support. I would offer that instead of writing legislation to ban effective interventions for child psychological abuse, that we should, if you're worried about the high road, let's debate it. And I would say that where's the AFCC sponsoring a series of these debates so we can end this fighting around the children? So if you're worried about the high road, first off, everything I say is 100% true and correct. And that's important because I'm a consultant in the family courts. And the court's going to look at my credibility. I know that. And I've known that for the last 10 years. And so I am establishing myself as a neutral arbiter in the family courts. I'm not a forensic psychologist. I'm a clinical psychologist. I don't do custody. I do diagnosis and treatment. And so I will diagnose the pathology and I will come up with a treatment plan to fix the pathology based on the established knowledge of clinical psychology. And that's the standard we should have from all psychologists. And so by bringing that standard to the courts, I'm establishing a baseline expectation of that's what we need to be doing, diagnosing and treating pathology. And now this is going to be a disputed diagnosis. We know that because it's a family court. The appellate system for a disputed diagnosis is second opinion. So let's get second opinion on all these cases. Let's just routinely get them out for a proper risk assessment for child abuse. Let's get a second opinion through telehealth consultation, third opinion if we want, two consultants from each litigant, and we get a assessing professional, and we get an accurate diagnosis that the court can rely on and an effective treatment plan that fixes things. All done. We don't have years of custody conflict in the family courts because the mental health people, us, the psychologists, get in early and treat the pathology and fix the problem. The forensic psychology is a failed experiment in service delivery. They did something different. We need to get rid of them and get clinical psychologists, diagnosis and treatment back, and we need to do real stuff with real knowledge. And second opinion consultations to stabilize our diagnosis, stop the staff splitting, stop the arguments amongst the professionals, get the courts clear answers that the court can rely on that are accurate, and that fix things. So, debate. AFCC, sponsor debate. Instead of banning Dorcy Pruter, let's debate it. Everything I say is 100% true and correct. The professionals need to stop fighting surrounding these children. That's a parallel process of splitting. The mental health professionals need to get competent and recognize staff splitting. Borderline is like, holy cow. And I would say, let's debate it. Debate the High Road Workshop, good or bad for children. AFCC, sponsor a debate. Good, Dr. Childress, bad, pick somebody, anybody you want. And we'll debate it, 2 hours online debate. Then all the information is up there. Everybody can make their just informed decisions, educated decisions, not ignorant decisions. Easy peasy. AFCC, sponsor a debate. Are they doing that? Nope, because nobody wants a solution. Everybody just wants to fight about this. So that's my discussion of Kayden's Law targeting a specific person, a specific program that is highly effective. Let's go back and end on that. That slide. Okay. 15-year-old kid, 3 years of documented child abuse, the High Road Workshop, 2 days, boom. That is what the legislature is trying to stop because they don't understand what it is. Has any of the legislature spoken with Dr. Childress and asked my opinion? Has any of the legislature spoken with Dorcy Pruter and find out what she actually does? It's just this hysteria from the borderline personality pathology and the sex abuse everywhere, and the mental health people are awful and they're abusing children and we need to protect the children. It's a persecutory delusion. Narcissistic borderline, the collapse into persecutory delusions. Do you understand the pathology in the family courts? No, you don't. You're acting from ignorance, and because of that, you're being manipulated by a dark personality. Stop it. This is child abuse. This is spousal abuse using the child as a weapon. We need to end the professional fighting around these children and reach a solution. Dorcy Pruter is not evil, and the High Road is not an awful thing that's harming children. If I give it my full credibility for no reason other than I know for a fact that I am safe doing that, because I've seen it. I know what the protocol is. I've watched it. I know how it works. And it is totally safe, effective, and wonderful. Okay, so now you discount me, discount Dr. Childress, say he doesn't know what he's talking about. You know I'm going to be straight with you. I'm straight with you about the forensic psychologists. I'm straight with you about the Gardner PAS people. And I'm straight with you about Dorcy Pruter. Now, something like Gottlieb's Turning Points, that's awful. You know, I've looked at that. It's my job to know who's in the family courts. That's my job as a consultant, to know what resources are available and what things are bad and what things to watch out for. And so Dorcy has my endorsement. So good luck to her going forward in fighting this. What's happening with Dorcy right now in Kayden's law is a false allegation of abuse by Dorcy Pruter and the High Road Workshop. That's a false allegation. So that is a parallel process to exactly what's happening in the family courts. One parent is making a false allegation of abuse against the other parent. So how is the legislature and how is professional psychology going to handle false allegations of abuse made against Dorcy Pruter in the High Road Workshop? Are we going to respond with hysteria, or are we going to actually respond with professional level evaluation and judgment? That workshop, pull up a couple here. Be aware, look at that 2-day workshop. That is what Kayden's law is seeking to prevent: a recovery of healthy and normal range attachment bonding between a parent and a child. That's what it's seeking to prevent. High Road Workshop, in my view, meets Ohm's law requirements, and I'll testify in support to it at any point in time. So if you want to litigate this in every single case and put it into trial and see if the High Road meets, criteria to be the court can order, then okay, I'll come testify. You can pay me, come testify, and I'll say exactly this, or you can hear this, and this is my testimony on this situation. So with that, I'm just going to say, instead of attacking Dorcy, she's a good person, and she's the child of any nation. She's trying to do good stuff. She's doing good stuff. She's done good stuff. And instead of attacking her, let's get her the mental health support she needs. Let's get a psychologist. Where are the psychologists from the AFCC contacting her? I am prohibited by the Oregon Licensing Board from providing any consultation to her. So I've stopped. She used to have me as a consultant that she could call up and ask a psychologist, if she had issues. I can't consult with her anymore because it's dangerous to my license by order of the Oregon licensing boards. So I have stopped all consulting with a business organization because the licensing boards will attack me. This is insane. It is insane over here, of the attacks and the violence that is directed against the mental health people and against Dorcy Pruter and against anybody who tries to stop the pathology. You won't get clinical people working over here if you're going to attack them like this, where they put their license and they get destroyed and slander and lies, and there's no defense. You won't get mental health people over here. And so we need to stop this. We need to de-escalate all the hysteria going around and get a balanced approach to any legislation moving through. And so the balanced approach, just pull that up one more time. So as part of the child custody proceedings, we protect kids from physically, sexually, psychologically, and neglectfully abusive. Add 4 types of child abuse. We protect kids from all forms of child abuse, and that'll fix things. As soon as you're motivated to fix things, you can fix things. As long as everybody wants to fight about things, we're going to fight about things. So with that, I'm going to head off to my Sunday here. Good luck to everybody, and we'll check in next week on some aspect of the family courts. Oh, my goodness. All right. So take care, everybody.